Bom dia, pessoal. Sejam bem-vindos ao nosso quarto dia da ELT Week Brasil 2024. Eu sou o Ramon Santos, sou analista de projetos do British Council. Estou muito feliz em estar aqui inaugurando mais um dia. Vou começar com a minha autodescrição. Eu sou um homem branco, possuo barba, cabelos escuros, meu olho também é escuro. Estou utilizando uma camisa com gola roxa e ao meu fundo é um fundo desfocado, branco, então só dá para ver um pouco do branco. Para mim é um prazer estar aqui mais uma vez com vocês, agora para recebê-los nesse quarto dia. Espero que estejam todos muito, muito contentes e ansiosos para essa próxima jornada que teremos no dia de hoje, focada em EdTech e inteligência artificial. No dia de ontem, a gente teve inúmeras discussões sobre avaliação e ensino, avaliação do ensino e da aprendizagem. Então, caso você tenha perdido alguma sessão ou não tenha conseguido participar de todas, elas estão aqui no YouTube, né? Recomendo a todos, convido a todos a acessarem através do link aqui no nosso canal. Então, fiquem à vontade para acessar aquelas sessões que vocês não conseguiram participar. Apenas um lembrete que nós temos um certificado de participação, e o link está sempre aqui na descrição de cada sessão, para que você faça a sua inscrição, e ao final de todas as sessões, será enviada uma pesquisa, e o certificado ele é emitido mediante essa pesquisa após o fim da nossa ELT Week. A inscrição pode ser feita a qualquer momento, então fiquem à vontade para fazer agora, caso ainda não tenham feito. Também mais um lembrete rápido, fiquem à vontade para compartilhar suas ideias no chat, para fazer seus comentários, deixarem perguntas, né? Usualmente, depois de cada sessão, a gente recebe os nossos convidados para responder as perguntas, né? Sempre naquele tom respeitoso e construtivo. Mas nossos comentários e as suas perguntas são muito bem-vindas. Então, para começar esse nosso quarto dia, essa iniciativa maravilhosa do British Council junto ao MEC, nós teremos a temática Ferramentas Práticas de IA que você pode utilizar para ensinar o inglês hoje. Né? Então, justamente tentar trazer essa ideia inovadora e essa adaptação nova do mercado para o ensino da língua inglesa. Né? Eu trago aqui com a gente dois convidados interessantíssimos, ilustres. Um deles é o Heriberto Diaz, que possui mais de 30 anos de experiência como professor, tutor, consultor acadêmico e teacher training no British Council. Hoje ele é diretor do Departamento de Linguagem no Centro de Investigação em Docência Econômica na Cidade do México. E o Lucian Alexandrin, que é especialista em ensino de idiomas, design e gestão de projetos de ESL e EFL, e desenvolvimento de negócios em inglês para ensino superior e setores privados. E também é teacher training no British Council. Então, eles serão responsáveis por nos guiar nessa fascinante aventura dentro das ferramentas práticas de IA para começar o dia de hoje. Nada como começar aprendendo e adquirindo conhecimento útil para o nosso dia a dia, para a nossa profissão. Desejo a todos uma ótima sessão, um ótimo dia de aprendizado e espero que a gente possa trocar bastante experiências. Eu estarei de volta com o Heriberto e com o Lucian no final da sessão para respondermos as perguntas aqui no chat. Uma boa sessão e um bom dia a todos.
Welcome everyone to our workshop, Practical AI Tools You Can Use to Teach English Today. My name is Lucian Alexandrin. I am an academic consultant, teacher, and trainer. And with me, I've got Heriberto Diaz.
Hi everyone. I'm Heriberto Diaz, and I'm also an academic consultant, teacher, consultant, and I love learning languages in general, but learning in general as well. So thank you, Lucian.
No, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. To give you an idea of the plan for today, we want to give you a bit of background and context to artificial intelligence tools, particularly in the context of teaching and learning. We want to look at some of the opportunities and challenges teachers and students have when it comes to using AI technology. And then we want to workshop some specific examples on how you can make different tools work for you in a teaching and learning environment. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with a bit of info on the background for AI tools. Right. So the first thing that we wanted to clarify is that it's becoming clear, it's very clear that generative AI in particular is a major disruptor in education, as well as in many other fields. So even though it's created quite the impact, it is perceived as a very powerful technology. People think that it is widely and easily available. It's actually quite easy to get a hold of any sort of a chatbot that is AI powered, and it's becoming more and more socially and professionally accepted. And to give you an idea of the meteoric rise of AI, when PCs came out in the 80s, in the last century, it took until the early 90s for us to have about 100,000 computers in use. Whereas with ChatGPT, it was adopted by 1 million users in just 5 days, and we got to 100 million users in just 6 months. So definitely a very different rise in terms of adoption and acceptance of AI versus the earlier technology of computers. So this is an expression from Latin that means I came, I saw, I conquered, and I think it's representative of what happened with AI tools, right? You'll recognize some of these players on the screen. There's quite a few companies, IT companies out there that are developing or have developed their own sort of AI tools and have been implementing them in a variety of fields around using, AI chatbots or AI-generated content for a variety of purposes. It is important to sort of specify that the generation of AI models we have today in 2024, is maybe different than, let's say, about a year or 2 years ago. So initially, what we had available was predictive models, models of AI that could help us identify something, like a photo, the language of a text, maybe steps in a process, or classify any sort of text, objects, songs, for example. And what most people use them for was essentially to find specific information, right? To search and find pictures, news, data, stories, just information on anything. Today's generation is called generative. And so that means it can create images, videos, diagrams, 3D models. I think we've seen that content on social media. It can also help generate text for specific purposes, lists, even song lyrics and music, and it can produce art, literature, and opinions. So that is quite the jump from predictive to generative. So I think the question that we want to ask is AI technology a friend or a foe? What do you think, Heriberto?
Well, this is a huge ethical issue in academia today, because there is a lot of resistance on part of sometimes the authorities, sometimes parents, sometimes teachers, right? Are we going to be out of jobs? That's the big question. And there are a lot of fears, and I see where they can come from. But in general, at the university where I teach, we had a meeting about coming up with a guideline on whether to, not even like how to use it, but whether we should allow our university students to use it in for writing their essays and many other things. But the focus there was placed on plagiarism and cheating, and students should not be cheating. And I'm not sure that was the discussion we want going on. I think the discussion should be placed on learning and our students. I mean, how can we promote better learning practices for our students? So there are some negative aspects about AI. For example, it generates a lot of information, but we need to be very careful because a lot of this information is generated, and so it's not always 100% reliable. Okay, that's why we need to be responsible when we use AI, but we also in this workshop, we'll talk about how to start using it for our practice and preparing our classes as teachers. But eventually, the more we learn about AI, the more we want to integrate it into our teaching. And that's one aspect that sometimes gets neglected. How do we improve learning practices of our students using what's out there, using what's available? So going back to friend or foe, I think it's a matter of looking at us as educators and think that we'll question ourselves: are we here to control, or are we here to facilitate learning? Okay, what is our role as educators? And so I would say AI is here to stay, and well, we go through a lot of resistances, but we'll talk about it later.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I think, as you can see on the screen from these headlines, opinions are split. And nowadays we do have a lot more data on how AI works, what it can do, what it cannot do, what it shouldn't do. But I think the good thing that we ought to be doing is starting this conversation at a professional level amongst teachers, and essentially, understanding that this technology is here to stay, and we need to understand how we want to use it to make it work to our advantage in the classroom. Exactly. All right. So to sort of focus this just a bit more, there are a lot of opportunities around teaching and learning in terms of AI tools that we've seen arise. One of them is that AI can be, let's say, a teaching assistant or a teacher collaborator, right? So this is about helping create course and class plans. It is about designing some activities, strategies, questions. It can also work to help us review student work and provide feedback. We can definitely work on a variety of assessment activities, formative, summative, evaluation grids and checklists. And there is that reflective sort of part where we can look at it critically, and AI actually is prepared to provide us with advice and options on how to do that in terms of our teaching and our students' learning, right? Another maybe aspect is that AI tools can be a trusted aid in what we call the learner-centered classroom, right? Where the focus is not on us, is on our students, particularly for those teachers that maybe are just starting or don't have particularly a lot of experience or support. Maybe they are dealing with multi-level classes. Maybe they need ideas, options. They need to work with individual student needs. And create more motivation and engagement, and of course, what's important to all of us, to promote autonomy and confidence. Heriberto, any of these opportunities that stands out to you that you've used or you've identified in your practice?
Right. And I want to go back to the focus. I think we need to shift from how we use AI and why we use it. Why we use it, because it's already here. Okay, when I first learned about AI, I was very reluctant. I was not afraid, because I like technologies, but I wasn't sure how much I could do. I wasn't sure how much my students could do. And the reason I started using it was because I was getting, like I mentioned earlier, I was getting these essays written by my students, and I felt frustrated, not because they were cheating. I felt frustrated because they were not giving me the opportunity to help them improve and develop their skills. Okay, and I think that's where we need to focus. We need to focus on the learning process. As educators, sometimes we tend to focus on the end product, on the result, on the correct answer. And there isn't always just one correct answer. In fact, we can use AI to, let's say, we'll talk about different activities that we can do, but we can use AI to promote critical thinking in our classes. Because sometimes we go to seminars, we go to discussions, we talk about, let's be critical thinkers. And we want concrete ideas to share with teachers in the audience. And how can I do this? How can I use AI to help me promote these skills? And again, I would say that the opportunity here is focus on control, focus on control or developing the skills. I think we tend to support the students' learning, and rather than focusing on reproducing information or getting students to copy paste, we don't want that. We don't want the end product. We can use whatever information is out there on the internet, on whatever is generated by AI, to use the information. So the information is out there. So use it in classes. Get students to find this article and then compare it, analyze it, question it. So by telling and training your students to question everything,
Exactly. I think I'm like you. I think with any new technology, we tend to be defensive, apprehensive about using it, to want more control, and it's certainly the case with this new technology. But I think maybe more productively we can better understand by talking, by discussing the challenges that AI tools are sort of bringing to the table today for teachers and for students. And as you said, leveraging those challenges, essentially taking them forward so we can convert them to opportunities, right? I've made a list of challenges that I'm sure teachers will agree with me come from the perspective of teaching and also learning. So there's anything from becoming prepared to use a new technology to maybe the lack of regulatory frameworks and policies for how AI should work. There is that sort of ethical aspect of what AI can actually do and should be doing or not, and how we should be using it for good, for constructive projects and so on. And I think, both for teachers and for learners, there is that danger that we might be over-relying on AI and thus, end up having shallow, superficial learning and teaching. You mentioned critical, so essentially teaching or educating our learners to become even better critical thinking learners in terms of using AI. So those are some of the challenges. I don't know if I've missed any that you think are an immediate concern for you as a teacher?
No. I just want to say that when it comes to educational technologies, when they emerge, we just feel like that's the answer, and educational technologies, our focus should be not so much the technology, but the students and the learning, not on the technology. I mean, technology is just the tool. Yeah, we have all these technologies. These are the tools. And every time there's a new tool, there's this tendency. First, like, for example, when AI came out, we tend to avoid using it, right? There's a new technology. First, we are reluctant. We avoid to use. We avoid using it. Then we kind of come to terms with certain. We're careful about it. For example, with AI, I thought, AI is here, but I'm not going to let my students cheat. So I'm going to get them to write in the classroom to prevent them from just copy pasting. That works for a while, but then it gets old. I mean, there are times where you just need to assign homework and they need to do it at home. And we need to trust the students. Okay, we need to come from a place of trusting rather than believing that they're cheating all the time. I think we should respect student ethics as well, And the last step is to adapt. And there I would say, okay, AI is here to stay, and so we need to learn how to incorporate it into our teaching experiences. And so I would say that prohibiting the use of AI is not the answer.
Exactly. And of course, that begs the question, how do we become ready for AI? What is one way to become, AI ready so we can actually use it to overcome challenges and maximize opportunities in the classroom? What do you think would be some steps?
Well, the first step, and this happened to me when I got all these essays, I thought, well, the students are using either Wikipedia or AI or something that I don't know of. So again, because AI is here to stay, students are already using some of these tools, okay,
Right.
in different ways, maybe just for copy pasting, but I think as teachers, we can guide students on how to use the technology for learning, not so much to download this and that article. So the first thing I decided to do was I'm going to open my account and I'm just going to play with the tool and see what happens. I think that's the first step. What do you think?
Exactly. I like that approach. It's a step-by-step approach. I think we do it in our lesson planning, in our course planning, and I think when it comes to learning to use the new technology, it's exactly the way forward. And the first step is indeed opening an account. And so you'll see in the picture on the screen some examples of apps that you can download that utilize an AI generator, an AI chatbot. And some are free and some are not free, and some are for maybe other purposes to do with design or other fields, but you definitely have options there. And the very first step is downloading or going to a website and signing up for one that you think will work for you. I think it's also important for teachers to understand what their context is. If this is a new technology, what are my needs, my immediate teaching and learning needs? What would I need to use it for, right? And then when you ask, let's say, a chatbot that works with AI a question, we call that prompting, right? We prompt it to support us with a text, with questions, with advice, with any kind of work. And so another step would be understanding how to become a prompt engineer, how to essentially be good at prompting, be very efficient at prompting. Just like with any new process, it's around practice and experimentation and learning from mistakes. It's also about, critical analysis and reflection. And let's not forget that, if we learn something new, if we discover something of importance, there's also the idea that we would like to share it, in collaboration, share it with other teachers, and thus contribute to our own and their development. So I think focusing on these 6 bullet points would probably help us become AI ready, right? All right, so getting started, as you said, involves identifying whether you're going to be using a chatbot that is available on a platform on a browser, or maybe one that comes as an app on your device. So on the screen, you can see what the main page for OpenAI for ChatGPT looks like for signing up or logging in. It even gives you an idea of what you could be using it for. So that's very easy to do. I think a lot of us maybe use, let's say, a phone or an iPad or a tablet in the classroom. So we might be more comfortable with having it on the go, and for that, maybe an app would work better, right? There are a lot of apps that or sites that use OpenAI that is essentially free, and some that need an upgrade that is a paid version. It's up to you. I think we have both started, Heriberto and myself, using ChatGPT, a free version called 3.5, and that has worked just fine for us. And the second step was around becoming what I said is a prompt engineer. Right, so you can see what the interface looks like in terms of providing ChatGPT 3.5 with a prompt. It even gives you advice and ideas on how to do it. And I think around becoming a prompt engineer, it is maybe focusing on some important aspects. I think you want to be smart about it. You want to be very specific about it, right? So you do want to provide context, and we'll show you what that means in just a second, looking at a task. You want to include helpful information. To give you an example from my own teaching practice, just the other day, I tried to come up with an activity using ChatGPT around helping my students practice minimal pairs, right, where the vowels are different. For example, pull and pool. And so ChatGPT just did not get it. It didn't quite know what minimal pairs are, and it kept providing lists of words with vowels that were similar but were not minimal. And what I was able to do is provide examples like pull and pull to essentially teach it that that's what I want. So that's about including helpful information, providing examples. You want to specify length. I think more often than not, if you want ChatGPT, for example, to produce a text, maybe this is going to be too long for your purposes, so you want to specify that it's 100 words, 150 words, or it's 10 questions, or 15 questions, or it's a list of 100 words or 50 words, right? You want to clarify the format, whether you want it to sort of highlight or put in bold specific information, to organize information by bullet point or paragraph. And something very important here is that you can actually ask for help. You can, in your own words, ask ChatGPT what you'd like to do, and it can actually help you become a better prompter. And you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen a list of resources that teachers would have available to help them become better at prompting.
Right.
It's required. Yeah.
Yeah. And, to say become a prompt engineer may sound very sophisticated, but my advice to you is have fun. I mean, there are all these tutorials and these suggestions that give you like very, very specific things, but it's like talking to someone. Yeah. Sometimes you just begin by saying, let's talk. Right. Or I'm going to ask you a question and answer like I'm a 5-year-old. And that can be a lot of fun. But when you want to create materials for your classes, you can, and I'm sharing these ideas for you to learn and feel comfortable with the tool. Once you gain more practice, you can become more specific. You can look at other tutorials to become a better prompt engineer. So I just wanted to add that and have fun with prompting.
Absolutely. And I use that term prompt engineer because that is the terminology. So it doesn't mean that you need to go to engineering school. It just means that you want to be very strategic in the way you develop your prompts, right? So to support this with an example in this workshop, so this is a prompt I gave ChatGPT, right? Give me an example of a complaint email. Presumably because in one of my classes we were working on language for complaints, and I wanted to show my learners an example of a complaint email. And indeed, it produced this example. To my liking, it's maybe too long. You'll see some words in there like hiccups and amicably and claims that would not be appropriate for maybe levels below B2 in English. So becoming a prompt engineer means focusing on those 6 elements that I mentioned before, and this is an example of that. So my second attempt was asking ChatGPT to write a formal complaint about service in a restaurant. I provided context. I specified the format, so 2 points of complaint, 2 suggestions. I specified the length, 150 words, and I also added that lexis should be appropriate for B1 level in English. And you're about to see the product that is markedly different from the first email that was produced, right? So it is shorter, it is clearer, it includes those 2 points of complaint and the 2 suggestions, and overall the language is more appropriate for someone who's at B1 level in English in terms of challenge, and that works so much better. And yeah, just to reiterate, it is about that, making it specific, maybe fine-tuning a little bit your prompts, what you're asking ChatGPT to do in order to achieve something that works better for your purposes and context. And I've seen teachers who are very polite. They would say please, they would say thank you at the end. It is a machine at the end of the day. It's not going to judge us if we don't hedge or make our language nice. I think it is about being direct and very specific with ChatGPT, and then we get what we need there. Right. So one of the things we wanted to do with the teachers who are viewing this today was to help them develop a toolkit, right? Just a kit, a toolbox where they have different techniques, different tips, different tools really to use AI better and more efficiently in the classroom and beyond. Okay. So I thought it might be a good idea to kind of focus on the areas that are important to us and to our students typically in a learning environment. So in terms of teaching, I think generative AI can support with lesson plans, with lesson outlines, with maybe creating activities for making the class more motivating and engaging. You can provide examples and models, as you've just seen of the complaint email. You can also help with glossaries and word lists. In a lot of my classes, I notice that my learners enjoy role plays, so you can also provide that. Even for those teachers who are starting and need a bit of support in terms of scaffolding the learning experience and building their CCQs, their concept check questions, their ICQs, their instruction check questions. You can also support with backward mapping. This is where you focus on the end objective, and then from the end objective, you construct a lesson, backwards. And this doesn't work with the free versions of AI models, but you can even support with image creation. So for example, for a young learner class, you might want your chatbot or your AI tool to create an image, including animals in a certain context or whatever, and this might work. Another important aspect for us as teachers is assessment, right? So here we can be supported by AI with questions for monitoring progress, for checking understanding, for ideas, for formative or summative evaluations, even supporting our students outside of the classroom with self-assessment activities, with rubrics and checklists. And something that we've been highlighting through this workshop was around critical thinking and reflection, right? So you might want to use AI to help provide feedback with actionable steps, and we'll show you an example of that in just a second. It can even provide models and annotated models that also facilitate reflection, and essentially it can also provide questions that lead to a more critical, reflective approach to learning and teaching. Any that I've missed?
Well, not really, but I just like to say that AI is everywhere, and we, in the different professions, we use AI for different purposes. And then the prediction for teachers is that it'll help us as teachers, save a lot of time in activities that take a long time. I'm thinking of a rubric right now. To think about a rubric, we need to, come up with the things we're going to be evaluating, all the elements, and chatbot will do it for you. Of course, you need to provide it with specific points that you want to evaluate.
Exactly.
But it's a time saver for for teachers, so that teachers can focus on developing activities for support learning. And one of the first steps that you want to do when using AI is to focus on how can AI make my life easier. And I've got all these students, what tools can I develop to make my better use of my time, better use of my time, but have better organization skills. But also the second step, once you have gained experience, is how do I train my students now in the use of AI? Because that's a very important issue. I talked to in different teaching experiences. When I talk to parents, they're concerned about their children using AI, and it changes and varies from context to context, from institution to institution. But I think when it comes to us educators teaching our students how to use the tool and why use it in the first place. Like for example, my students at university, they were reluctant to even tell me that they were using it.
Right.
Hey, you can use it. There are things that you can do in class. Like we said earlier, the tool is already here. Now incorporate it into your teaching. In a few moments, I'm going to show some examples of how we can use the tool and how we can allow students, or not just allow, but encourage them to use the tool in their learning.
Exactly. Yeah, we both prepared a few examples each, so let's get straight to that. All right, so this is a prompt where I felt I needed a couple of warmer activity ideas for an English class, for a class that was going to focus on narrative tenses. And again, I was very specific in terms of what I wanted ChatGPT to do, and it gave me 2 ideas. Am I going to use these ideas? Maybe one, maybe not the other, but it's definitely sort of having this available as Heriberto says, making your experience as a teacher just a bit easier, complementing maybe when you don't have enough time or sufficient resources, right? Another example is maybe at a different level for university students, and this was on providing a lesson outline, right? Not a plan, but an outline around a task to essay for IELTS for level B2 students. And I even specify the length of the class and so on. And that at the end, I'd like learners to focus on peer checking their work using a checklist. So this is a screenshot from what ChatGPT was able to provide. To my sort of critical thinking, I think it's great. There's definitely that focus on coherence and cohesion, on linking words, on practicing, sort of in a more controlled manner with just sentences, and then at the end doing some peer checking. Would I perhaps add more activities? Absolutely, right? So maybe here I would come up with an example essay that they could look at that was not necessarily included here. But in a pinch, in a rush, you can definitely go ahead and be provided with a lesson plan here. In terms of assessment, which is the other point I mentioned, so here's the prompt. I wanted to assess something in pronunciation, right? A task that actually teaches that is formative assessment around the consonant sound z. And so again, very helpful advice from ChatGPT, including games, including something just more interactive, and also some assessment criteria, right? What I liked is that the note at the bottom said that I need to remember to provide constructive feedback, right, around correct usage of the target language or target pronunciation in this case. And that was also helpful, maybe a helpful reminder for the tired teacher. Another example would be, in this case, like focusing on one of the suggestions there. So it can come up with 10 lists that would contain that consonant, right? And then I wanted to sort of do maybe reading dictation or something that involves a text, and ChatGPT was able to create a text that contained these 10 words. And then last but not least, in terms of assessment, okay, what would be fun activity? And here are some ideas that were provided, right? A charades game with the Z sound. So, and I really like this. So, and it's actually not something I had done before in class, and this was a very novel idea to me, and it worked very well. In terms of critical thinking and reflection, my example would be the first one. I wanted to promote critical thinking in terms of evaluating opinions in science-based texts, right? So there you go. There's some annotation there. There's some debate preparation where they can fine-tune their language for evaluating opinions against criteria and against other peers and so on. And again, this would be a very good activity that promotes critical thinking. That is the main purpose there. And then maybe focusing on sort of autonomous learning and learning beyond the classroom. So I had a real essay from a student that I fed to ChatGPT in a prompt, and ChatGPT was able to support with all these points there that are actionable. And they're very specific. They refer to specific quotes, specific writing that the student had produced. Is it very focused on maybe the criteria for evaluating an IELTS essay? Maybe not so much. Maybe it goes beyond that. So this is, again, when you as a critical teacher look at what you know and what you know the standards might be, and you adapt this to maybe fit that just a bit better. Right, and then we've got some examples from Heriberto, right?
Right, and yeah, this is once you're familiar with the tool and you're ready to, okay, I'm going to teach my students how to use it, because because there are many ways in which they can become very productive. Here's an example that says, I'm a law student and I need to give a presentation in English and corruption. Can you give me some vocabulary to do this at A2 level? So it'll display a list of words. And then what I really like about ChatGPT is that it's a continuous dialogue. So you cannot see it on the screen here. We will need like 5 screenshots. But the next step is, after these definitions, I said, can you give me some examples of these words in sentences? And so there it is. It has a lot of input. So it's not just some students copy pasting. It's students actually learning and engaging with developing vocabulary, for example.
Exactly, using the tool in a constructive way. Yeah, and even for us teachers, as we teach them to do this, I think there's some learning there for us in terms of how we can make it work, how we can modify the language models that we use. Exactly. Right. Then.
So there are other examples. You can use it as a student to have it explain a term to you. So what is accountability? And at the bottom, you say, how do you say accountability in Spanish? But what? Because why not use the L1, right? This is something that students can do at home. You can train them that we as teachers, we're not the only source of information. You can promote autonomous learning, teach them how to use the tool. You can even do this they can do this in Spanish, right? These are more exercises. Hopefully, if you're already playing with the tool right now, just type any question that you can think of as a student. Sometimes for fun, I ask it to teach me other languages, and I just have a lot of fun with the tool. So I think I've got one last, just to show you that students can type in Spanish, quiero aprender vocabulario sobre transporte, and it'll display a list. Again, students pick and choose, right? Students can get advice from ChatGPT. Of course, we're always going to be there to clarify as teachers, but that's like, for example, as an independent learner, I like to have a tool accessible all the time.
I really like your examples because they really focus on developing learner autonomy. I think typically maybe students would go to the end of a student book and look up some grammar resources or vocabulary resources. They might do a search, like a Google search, for example. But this is really showing them that whatever they might be, if they have those 5 minutes, they can actually use ChatGPT in this case to help them go over something, review something, or even learn something in ways that are far and far removed from plagiarism or unethical uses. It's just for their own learning in terms of generating context and text and language that they can use to practice. Excellent examples. All right. So what would you say are some takeaways from all the ideas we've discussed today?
Well, I'd say, again, focus on learning, not on control, and evaluate the learning process rather than the homework assignments. Okay, what are the steps? What's happening between the day of the assignment and the steps that the student took to the day of the final assignment? I don't know if that makes sense, but we're going to have a question and answer section, and I'll be very happy to clarify and go further into these ideas.
Exactly. For me, I think is just coming to terms that generative AI is here to stay. It's going to get even better. That using it really does not require a lot. Just take a step-by-step approach. Your prompt engineering skills, refining those, it's something that I think has a very sharp learning curve, and teachers can go ahead and sort of work on that. We provided some good examples there. It's good for us to have our own, we all have our own teaching styles, and I think the way we have our tools in our toolkit essentially are around specific tools that complement our own teaching style and teaching approach. We want to be, again, critical and reflective and an assertive generative AI user, and inculcate, teach, educate our students to be the same. And as I mentioned, do share with our teachers, do invite them to try out what you've tried out with generative AI, because it is collaborative work, and we are in a large community of teachers. And with that being said, yeah, I think we'd be moving to a Q&A session. Thank you. We appreciate having us and listening to us, and we do encourage you to try out some of these ideas today.
It's another amazing session. So thank you to the audience for engaging through the chat throughout all the session. And now it is the moment for you to add your comments
pela sessão. Agora é o momento de falarmos sobre
make your questions, so we can answer. I am here with Professor Heriberto and Lucian, so welcome you both. It is a pleasure to have you here, Heriberto. We cannot hear you, sorry.
Talk about technology. I just unmuted myself. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm so happy to have you here, Lucian.
I am glad to be here as well. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. So throughout the session, we have been receiving lots of comments, most of them talking about the importance of the use of AI. And usually we know the importance, but we do not know how to use them. So I'm pretty sure that the session was very helpful for all the audience here, and is going to be in the future for those who will be watching in the future. So I have the first question, and I'll make it, and you can feel free to add your comments, both of you. So is it viable to let students use AI by themselves? I assume it is part of our new responsibilities to teach them how to properly use AI.
Okay. May I go first, Lucian? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that students are already using it, whether we teach them or not. Sometimes I tell my students, I assign homework, and I say, please don't use ChatGPT. And they just smile because they know they're using it, and they won't tell me. Instead, I tell them, okay, use technology. I mean, you can use ChatGPT to do your homework, but to me, it's a matter of redesigning the tasks that we give students. For example, I just don't say, okay, write a paragraph about transport in your city. I try to make it more personal, or I can try to, in the same activity, I try to tell students, okay, find 2 paragraphs and compare them, or ask ChatGPT to give you 2 descriptions and then give me your opinion on it. So it's a matter of, yes, students are going to use it whether we want it or not, but it's a matter of thinking of ways of how to make students more critical and more active, more active and more critical thinkers and practical users of the language, and also the tool, because I mean ChatGPT is used for you can use it for any subject, for any not just language learning, of course, but it depends on what you want students to do, and there are many activities that you can implement, and here it's a matter of becoming creative as a teacher, and trying to understand, as we mentioned lots of times during the conference, that it's very important to question ourselves and keep questioning ourselves, what are students learning with this experience? Okay, and that is even before AI, before technology, whatever activity we do in the class, we should always reflect on what learning took place with this activity. So
yeah, thank you. Would like to add something, Lucian?
Just maybe another example. I think, as Heriberto says, it's just the opportunity for us to encourage students to use AI critically in class. So a few months ago, I think I was teaching a class on conditional structures, and I thought it might be a good idea to look at some fables, because they provide this kind of dilemma, sort of different options students could explore. And I used ChatGPT in this case. It provided 5 very simple fables, and one of them stood out a little bit. In one of them, the main character was an ant that apparently had gotten lazy through the summer, so basically starved in winter. And, as humans, we know that ants would never do that. An ant would never sort of stop working in the summer. But AI doesn't know that because that information is nowhere on the internet. It's just not there. We have it in our heads. We observed it. We know it. So in my class, it was a great opportunity to show students how to do a bit of critical thinking, and also for them to be able to sort of compare their experience and how they see life, how they perceive their experiences, how they understand this world versus how AI understands it. So it was even the idea that if they do any kind of work, if they generate any kind of sort of text or information with the help of AI, they can actually be very critical thinkers. So that was like a very basic level, reflective, critical thinking that I was able to explore as a teacher in the classroom with my students.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both. We have another one, and I think it's a general concern for teachers, and it is related to plagiarism. Is plagiarism a real issue, and how to avoid it while using AI?
I think it has to do with ethics. It's an ethical issue, and when we talked about training students how to use the tool, we also train them to decide, am I being honest using this tool? Because plagiarism is just, okay, if they ask me to write a paragraph on transportation again, I might just copy and paste like we did before with Google, for example. We do a Google search, and it's sort of the same thing, copying and pasting information. But also, I think it comes with also training the students to be honest about their own learning, and it depends on the age of students as well, because I mean, younger students might just want their homework done and not take the time to reflect on how much am I learning here. Um, but I mean, it also depends on where, at what level you're teaching. For example, university. We teach at university level, and there it can be a real issue. But I also think that university students are more mature to understand that there are tools to identify plagiarism as well. So I think, and I start to notice this in the future, for us to not avoid, because technology is unavoidable. It's here, and we need to embrace it, and we need to work with it. Um, but yeah, it can be an issue, but it depends on um, school policies, how you train your students as a teacher, how to work with colleagues to, let's say, promote the use of the responsible use of technology. And so, yeah, it can be an issue, but it has to do with more personal ethics and ethical issues.
Yes, perfect. Lucian?
Yeah, here just to add, yeah, plagiarism has always been a problem, right? In education, it will continue to be a problem. The more tools we have available, the easier it is going to be to actually do some tasks using, outside help. I would say on one hand, yeah, I think we should make students aware that there are ways to check whether plagiarism has been committed with the help of AI. I know we have, I think it's called GPT-0 or any AI detector. So there are tools out there that we can easily use as teachers. And if anything is high stakes, I think we want to remove any temptation, any opportunity for students to actually engage with AI and get that help there. So, if it's an important like assessment essay, or if it's any kind of work that they need to be producing that is going to count towards their grade, towards something more important like for professional purposes, then I think we want to remove the opportunity for them to engage with AI, because the temptation will always be there. And most crimes are crimes of opportunity. And so if you remove the opportunity, I think it reduces it. And as Heriberto says, you know, in class, we have to encourage them to behave ethically, to sort of, you know, think sort of further ahead and have that vision of, you know, having integrity in the future. And that also helps. We can do that as educators. We can encourage them to actually avoid plagiarism.
Yeah, perfect. So we are receiving lots of compliments here on the chat. And I would say that the session was so complete, we do not have further questions. So I'd like to ask for you both to let the audience in the future know your social medias or your LinkedIn so they can reach out to you after this. Is that okay?
Sure.
Absolutely. I can be found on LinkedIn, Lucian Alexandrin. And so yeah, it's always a pleasure to engage with teachers, with educators, with students everywhere. And so you know, it's good for us to realize that we're in a, you know, we're in this together. And the advent of AI is a huge opportunity for us and for students. And if we can stay connected, the better.
Thank you. Heriberto, please.
Me too. I can be reached at LinkedIn, Heriberto Diaz, and I'm found easily. So I'd be very happy to, you know, just interact with people. And well, I must say this: I love Brazil. É meu prazer escutar você falar hoje. Então é isso, né?
Perfect. O prazer é nosso, Heriberto. So thank you so much, you both. It is a pleasure, a huge pleasure to have you both with us. We hope to see you both in the future with the British Council in another opportunities. But that's all for today. So thank you so much. Hope you have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ramon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And for the audience, we'll be right back with another session. We are just starting the day. Thank you.